Good morning. It is Thursday, January the 18th, and this is The Drill. Thank you very much. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States of America today, because I'm the only one that makes the presumption for the status quo. Speaking to all you butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers, when the waters were changed. Once upon a time, the teacher of Moses called upon mankind with a warning. At a certain date, he said all the water in the world which had not been specially hoarded would disappear. It would then be renewed with different water, which would drive men mad. Only one man listened to the meaning of this advice. He collected water and went to a secure place where he stored it, and waited for the water to change its character. On the appointed date, the stream stopped running, the wells went dry, and the man who had listened, seeing this happening, went to his retreat and drank his preserved water. When he saw from his security the waterfalls again beginning to flow, this man descended among the other sons of men. He found that they were thinking and talking in an entirely different way from before, yet they had no memory of what had happened, nor of having been warned. When he tried to talk to them, he realized that they thought he was mad, and they showed hostility or compassion, not understanding. At first he drank none of the new water, but went back to his concealment to draw on his supplies every day. Finally, however, he took the decision to drink the new water, because he could not bear the loneliness of living, behaving, and thinking in a different way from everyone else. He drank the new water and became like the rest. Then he forgot all about his own store of special water, and his fellows began to look upon him as a madman who had miraculously been restored to sanity. And again, I read this because this illustrates what's going on in this country today. It is a battle not of politics, but of psychology and sanity. And I heard President Trump yesterday. He was being asked a question as he was getting ready to board a flight about Russian collusion. And the reporter flat out asked him, did you collude with the Russians? And this is going back to colluding with the Russians to interfere in the 2016 presidential elections. And he said, no, I didn't collude with the Russians. I've never colluded with the Russians, that kind of thing. And goes on to explain. The question, there are arbitrary statements. There's also arbitrary questions. And that was an arbitrary question. And by answering it, he gives the question credibility. And in so doing, by giving the question credibility, he makes himself look bad. He makes himself look like somebody that has a guilty conscience and feels he has something to prove. And every conservative in this country needs to know and understand that at all times, conservatives have nothing to prove, ever. Nothing to prove, ever. That it is the left that has the burden of proof, always. Because the left is the side that makes the presumption for change. Conservatives are the side that make the presumption for the status quo, for the way things are. So, again, all you end up doing when you try to prove a negative, when you're trying to prove something to a lefty, is you just end up making yourself look bad. Don't do it. Resist that temptation. Because again, the battle is going to be won at street level. It's going to be won by individual conservatives dealing with and defeating the liberals, the socialists in each one of our lives that we run into each and every day. Family members, co-workers, and friends, and even strangers that you're going to meet, say, at the supermarket or when you're at AYSO soccer practice or a soccer game. So keep that in mind. Now, when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the Ayn Rand lexicon, and then we're going to do a few more of the 30 covert manipulative techniques. Thank you very much. Welcome back. The concept of the day is emotions. Just as a pleasure-pain mechanism of a man's body is an automatic indicator of his body's welfare or injury, a barometer of its basic alternative, life or death, so the emotional mechanism of man's consciousness is geared to perform the same function as a barometer that registers the same alternative by means of two basic emotions, joy or suffering. Emotions are the automatic result of man's value judgments integrated by his subconscious. Emotions are estimates of that which furthers man's values or threatens them, that which is for him or against him, lightning calculators giving him the sum of his profit or loss. But while the standard of value operating the physical pleasure-pain mechanism of man's body is automatic and innate, determined by the nature of his body, the standard of value operating his emotional mechanism is not. Since man has no automatic knowledge, he can have no automatic values. Since he has no innate ideas, he can have no innate value judgments. Man is born with an emotional mechanism, just as he is born with a cognitive mechanism. But at birth, both are tabula rasa. It is man's cognitive faculty, his mind, that determines the content of both. Man's emotional mechanism is like an electronic computer, which his mind has to program, and the programming consists of the values his mind chooses. But since the work of man's mind is not automatic, his values, like all his premises, are the product either of thinking or of his evasions. Man chooses his values by a conscious process of thought or accepts them by default, by subconscious associations, on faith, on someone's authority, by some form of social osmosis or blind imitation. Emotions are produced by man's premises, held consciously or subconsciously, explicitly or implicitly. Your subconscious is like a computer, more complex than a computer than men can build, and its main function is the integration of your ideas. Who programs it? Your conscious mind. If you default, if you don't reach any firm convictions, your subconscious is programmed by chance, and you deliver yourself into the power of ideas you do not know you have accepted. But one way or another, your computer gives you printouts, daily and hourly, in the form of emotions, which are lightning-like estimates of the things around you, calculated according to your values. An emotion is an automatic response, an automatic effect of man's value premises, an effect, not a cause. There's no necessary clash, no dichotomy between man's reason and his emotions, provided he observes their proper relationship. A rational man knows, or makes it a point to discover, the source of his emotions, the basic premises from which they come. If his premises are wrong, he corrects them. He never acts on emotions for which he cannot account, the meaning of which he does not understand. In appraising a situation, he knows why he reacts as he does and whether he is right. He has no inner conflicts. His mind and his emotions are integrated. His consciousness is in perfect harmony. His emotions are not his enemies. They are his means of enjoying life, but they are not his guide. The guide is his mind. This relationship cannot be reversed. However, if a man takes his emotions as the cause and his mind as their passive effect, if he is guided by his emotions and uses his mind only to rationalize or justify them somehow, then he is acting immorally. He is condemning himself to misery, failure, defeat, and he will achieve nothing but destruction, his own and that of others. And this goes quite a bit on and on and on, so I'm just going to leave it there for the time being because I did want to make a couple of comments. Let's see here. Let's see. They're not his guide. His guide is his mind. The relationship cannot be reversed. However, man takes his emotions as the cause and his mind as their passive effect. If he's guided by his emotions, he uses his mind to rationalize or justify them somehow. What she's describing here is called activism. This is what the activists do. Activism is the theory that one should act first, think later. And so and then if you're thinking later, what you're really doing is justifying or rationalizing your actions. And that's what she says here, guided by his emotions and uses mind only to rationalize or justify them somehow. So, and then also I wanted to give her kudos. Let's see, on, here it is. Since he has no innate ideas, he can have no innate value judgments. Man is born with an emotional mechanism blah, blah, blah. Both are tabula rasa. She gets it right. This is one of the issues, or had been one of the issues, thousands of years ago about having to do with epistemology, which is the study of knowledge. And the issue was, are people born with all the knowledge they're going to have? In other words, is knowledge innate? Or are they born a blank slate and they acquire knowledge as they grow and develop? And I say, and Ayn Rand sees the same thing, and the correct answer is that we're tabula rasa, and we know that by the evidence of our senses. Anyone that's ever been around a child, a baby, knows this as a matter of fact, and knows it with absolute certainty. Now, it's important because otherwise, if you start thinking that you're born with all the knowledge you're ever going to have, then there's no point in going to school. There's no point in learning anything, okay, because you already have all the knowledge you're ever going to have. So a lot of us that grew up in the 60s and 70s were taught that, usually through American culture, not at school, but through what we saw on and heard from our friends and various television shows and radio programming and rock and roll tunes and whatnot, that knowledge is innate. There's no reason to really go to school because either you know or you don't know. And you're going to be limited. You have a limit to your knowledge, and that's a limit that you're never going to be able to overcome. And it's not true. But what that had a tendency to do is people like myself and Rush Limbaugh had a tendency to want to look past schooling. Why bother to stay in high school? Why bother to go to college? There's no point in it. May as well get out in the world and start making some money and start producing rather than wasting my time in school because I'm not going to learn anything anyhow. Not true. It took me years to learn that lesson, to learn that is absolutely untrue, and to start getting back into learning again. And as a matter of fact, it was reading Ayn Rand and her nonfiction works that got me interested in learning again. And that's, again, one of the blessings. I don't know how else to exactly what the word is that I want to use, but that I'm grateful, I guess, to Ayn Rand for that, for her rekindling my desire to learn. So, but those of you that are thinking, well, I know everything I'm going to know, don't be that way. It's wrong. The right answer is that you can always learn. The difference between smart and stupid is not the amount of knowledge you have, but how fast you learn. Some people learn faster than others, and on different subjects. You might have somebody that's a math whiz, but can't deal with English, basic English composition and English literature and things of that nature. I knew kids like that in school. But mathematically, they were geniuses, but in other areas, boy, oh boy, they really suffered. So it is important whether or not ideas are innate or acquired, and they definitely are acquired. Now, when I come back, I'm going to be reading from the 30 covert emotional manipulative techniques. Thank you very much. And we're at number 17. There's 30 of them, and what he's doing now is listing all the different covert manipulation techniques, and then he's going to go into how to defeat these techniques. 17, lying. Lying is the granddaddy of manipulation tactics. Purposeful manipulators lie frequently and without remorse, and have an arsenal of lying styles to work from. Others may feel remorse, but will lie anyway to get what they want. Manipulators will say anything to get results. Many are expert liars who lie convincingly, frequently, and with impunity. Basically, a lie is a false statement deliberately presented as the truth. But there are many other ways to lie that go far beyond simply making a blatantly false statement. Those statements often work, though, because we can't believe that someone we trust would look us in the eye and tell us such a brazen, bald-faced lie. Lies of omission are one of the more subtle forms of lying. Instead of making a deceptive statement, the liar withholds the truth. For example, the manipulator may not tell you he's married if he thinks it would stop you from becoming involved with him. He didn't tell you he wasn't married, he just didn't tell you that he was. Vagueness is another subtle form of lying. When you confront a manipulator about something, they respond, but their answer is lacking in details. They count on you not to probe them for more information. An especially effective way to lie is to hide it in the middle of a litany of truths. Liars lie to avoid taking responsibility or to get you to believe that they want you to what they want you to believe in order to get something that they want. 18. Invalidation. Invalidation is rejecting, diminishing, ignoring, judging, or making fun of someone's feelings. Invalidation is a highly detrimental form of emotional manipulation. Unfortunately, it happens all too often, and there even seems to be an epidemic of it in society. People invalidate others for a variety of reasons, sometimes purposefully and sometimes not. An abuser will use invalidation as a tool of manipulation and as a weapon. Others who invalidate may be short on empathy. Some may feel uncomfortable with your pain or feel powerless to do anything to help you. Others are simply jealous. Examples of invalidating statements made in response to you expressing your feelings or talking about a difficult situation. You should be ashamed of yourself for feeling that way. It could be worse. You shouldn't feel that way. Just don't worry about it. Get over it. Stop taking everything so personally. Lighten up. You must be kidding. Can't be that bad. You're just tired. It's not worth getting upset over. Just drop it. I'm sure she didn't mean that. Time heals all wounds. Every cloud has a silver lining. You can choose to be happy. It's frustrating not feeling understood and not getting the emotional support you reached out for. Invalidation makes you wonder if there's something wrong with you for feeling the way you do. It undermines self-confidence because it causes self-doubt. This in turn diminishes self-esteem. Excuse me. Invalidation will be explored in more depth in a later chapter. 19. Charm. They know what makes us laugh, what makes us fearful, what excites us, what turns us off, and above all, what makes us vulnerable. A quote from George Simon, Ph.D., psychologist and expert in character disturbances. Skilled manipulators excel at hiding their true character and presenting themselves as charming and seductive. If you think you would never fall for it, think again. All of us turn on the charm and put our best foot forward in a new relationship, but manipulators use charm to advance a hidden agenda. Manipulators use charm as a way to disarm you and gain your trust. They make you feel interesting, liked, valued, and appreciated. Skilled manipulators are socially intelligent con artists, adept at expressing interests in you and your welfare, and at opening up to you and appearing vulnerable. How can you tell the difference between benign charm and malicious charm? Listen to your gut instincts, according to Dr. George Simon. On his website, manipulativepeople.com, he writes, quote, psychopaths and the other disturbed character types tend to exude a superficial charm or glibness in their interpersonal manner. It often goes unnoticed as a huge red flag it is, but it can be detected if you know just what to look for. The smoothness or social facility these individuals display is generally not matched by congruent and concomitant emotion. They may have had a very easy way with words, but usually their smooth talk is not accompanied by any emotion that matches what they're saying or that can be sensed and felt by others as genuine. Still, you can easily doubt your gut instincts, thinking that they must be being genuine, and allow yourself to be unduly swayed, unquote. Once a malicious charmer disarms your gut instincts, you are basically defenseless. 20. Intentional forgetting. The manipulator pretends he or she forgot something that's important to you, such as an agreement, a promise, or a commitment, or even an ingredient you need for dinner that night that he agreed to pick up on his way over. The manipulator will look you in the eye and keep a straight face as they tell you that they're sorry, but they simply forgot your request or they don't recall making that agreement. When a manipulator forgets something that is important to you, they are attempting to evade responsibility by blaming something out of their control. In addition, the manipulator is implying that whatever it was they forgot wasn't important enough for them to remember, and neither are you. 21. Brandishing anger or traumatic one-trial learning. The manipulator will put on an act of intense anger for the purpose of shocking you into submission. This is called traumatic one-trial learning because it will quickly train you to avoid confronting, upsetting, or contradicting the manipulator. I had an experience like that at work where one of my coworkers took something that belonged to me, and I confronted them about it, and they started making excuses and doing all these other dances, and I kept pursuing it. They made some kind of an excuse. I went here or I did that, and I said, no, I saw you somewhere else. I saw you over there. I saw you doing this or that or the other thing. And finally what this individual did was he exploded in anger, and it worked. I backed off. Number 22, scapegoating. Scapegoat is defined as a person or animal that takes on the sins of others. They are unfairly blamed for other people's problems. A scapegoat is also known as a whipping boy or fall guy. Scapegoating is a process of singling out a victim and making them responsible for problems when they're not really the one who deserves the blame. A person can be made into a scapegoat for a relationship or for an entire family or even a workplace. Skilled manipulators usually scapegoat another person on purpose, while others unconsciously project their unwanted thoughts and feelings onto another to make them take the blame for their own mistakes or shortcomings, which relieves the one doing the scapegoating of shame, blame, and responsibility. Many of the manipulation tactics listed here include an element of victim blaming, but scapegoating goes beyond that. People who are made into scapegoats feel deep and persistent shame and develop a victim mentality. 23. Belittling. The manipulator will diminish and belittle the victim's opinions and ideas either verbally or non-verbally through the use of eye rolls, scoffs, smug smiles, sarcasms, or a mocking tone of voice. This tactic induces shame and humiliation, crushes your self-esteem, and makes you much less willing to voice your opinions and ideas in the future. Diminishing a victim's self-esteem makes it easy for a manipulator to put himself in control. And this is a technique that you'll see often in politics. The people like to do things when they're exerting power in fairly subtle ways, especially the left. The left loves subtlety and nuance, and one of the ways that they can be subtle and nuanced is to belittle people and things. 24. Putting you on the defensive. Many of the covert tactics here will put you on the defensive, meaning that they will cause you to feel you must verbally defend who you are, what you believe, or what the truth is. It's an important sign to look for if you're trying to determine if you're a victim of manipulation. There's a reason manipulators want to put you on the defensive. Covert manipulation tactics trigger you to react emotionally instead of responding rationally, but is exactly what the manipulator wants. Calm, rational conversations don't always go in their favor. In addition, they can use your emotional reactions against you if they choose to, as you've seen in several other tactics. And this is, again, what I was talking about earlier with the president. They put the president on the defensive by asking him, did you collude with the Russians? Are you colluding with the Russians? Again, asking somebody, do you still beat your wife, is a form of putting somebody on the defensive. 25. Creating fear. What many of these manipulation tactics have in common is that they make the victim feel fear, namely the fear of losing the manipulator and the relationship. We don't want to lose them, so we act in the way they want us to act in order to avoid that loss. In this situation, it's convenient that the person who created our fear is the only one who can relieve our fear, so we unwittingly end up giving them all the power in the relationship. Creating fear is a powerful way to gain control. Politicians do it all the time. They create or exaggerate a potentially dangerous problem and then tell you that if you vote for them, they'll protect you from it. 26. The pity play. Quote, I am sure that if the devil existed, he would want us to feel very sorry for him. Unquote. Martha Stout, author of The Sociopath Next Door. And the devil does exist, and I'm sure he does want us to feel sorry for him. Using this tactic, the manipulator will inspire your pity by making themselves look like the victim of circumstance or some unfair person or organization. This elicits your sympathy and your cooperation, because as a person with a conscience, you can't stand to see someone else suffering. Manipulators know how to take advantage of our conscience. Using the pity play tactic, the manipulator will tell you a sad story that tugs at your heartstrings. They might tell you they were unfairly fired from their job and need money to pay their bills, or that they've been unfairly evicted by their crazy landlord and need a place to stay, only until they find a new apartment. Oh, and the landlord kept their security deposit, so they'll need to save money for another one and won't be able to help you with living expenses. The pity play can be much more subtle. If you find out your new love interest is married but didn't say so, he or she will tell you a heartbreaking story of their spouse's emotional neglect and the terrible loneliness they've endured because of it. They'll say that they only stayed in the marriage because they never imagined they would meet someone else, especially someone as wonderful as you. One crafty manipulator hung his head and said, quote, "I give up. I put my heart on a shelf. I never dreamed I'd fall in love again. And now here you are. I should have told you I was married, but I was so scared I'd lose you," unquote. Not a word of it was true, but it worked. She felt so sorry for this poor, lonely, and hopeless man who had given up on life until she came along. 27. Rationalization. This is also known as justification or excuse-making. The manipulator creates reasons for their bad behavior that sound logical and rational in order to make their actions more understandable, acceptable, or appropriate. They do this to get you off their back so they can continue doing what they feel like doing. Quote, "Every man watches porn. It's not just me," unquote. Quote, "What I did wasn't illegal. If it were, there would be a law against it, right?" Unquote. Quote, "I'm sorry I hit you. I just lost my mind for a minute because you pushed so many of my buttons," unquote. When you trust someone and want to think the best of them, you strive to understand their behavior. Manipulators are happy to help you do that. 28. Flattery. Any halfway clever devil, quote, "Any halfway clever devil would decorate the highway to hell as beautifully as possible," unquote. Quote, attributed to somebody named Chris Jammy. You, my dear reader, are strikingly intelligent, so I know you will learn to recognize the manipulation tactic of flattery. Flattery is an excessive or false praise and compliments given in an effort to integrate you to a manipulator in order to advance their own agenda. Manipulators use flattery because it works. We want to feel good about ourselves, so we like it when others make us feel that way. When we think someone recognizes and appreciates our good qualities, it can have a powerful effect on us. Flattery can make you feel beautiful, intelligent, appreciated, valued, lovable, sexy, or special. You might think that you would notice insincere praise or compliments, but skilled manipulators can pull it off without you noticing. If flattery accompanies an obvious ulterior motive, it's easy to spot. But if a manipulator keeps his ulterior motive hidden, it can be easy to accept as genuine. After all, if this person doesn't seem to want anything from you, if they're not selling you something, trying to get you in bed, hoping for a raise or asking you for a loan, why would they be buttering you up? Just as a manipulator's agenda can be kept hidden, so can their flattery. There are methods of flattery that are very subtle or craftily disguised. One of the most subtle forms of flattery is being asked for your advice. It conveys the idea that the manipulator respects and admires your opinions, knowledge, or skill. Another way to disguise flattery is to preface it with a disclaimer, such as, "I don't want to embarrass you, but," "I know you won't want me to say this, but." Another method of disguise is for the flatterer to disagree with your point of view at first and then come around to agreeing with you. This technique will make you feel smart, persuasive, and listened to. Complimenting you to people you know when you're not present and expecting they'll pass the compliment on to you is an effective disguise. Using this method, the flatterer avoids looking like an obvious suck-up. When someone compliments a quality you have that is seldom noticed or appreciated by others, it's a powerful maneuver that leads you to believe the manipulator is able to recognize your best points and that they value them. That's just the kind of person they want in our lives. Skilled manipulators excel at reading people and figuring out their emotional needs. They also excel at pretending to fulfill them. Let's see here. I'm going to leave the last two for Monday. And the last two are love bombing and trance and hypnosis. And they're rather long, so I'll leave them for Monday. But then after that, the author is going to go into more detail about each one of these tactics and how to deal with them or how to defeat them. So that brings us to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, thank you very much for listening and have a great day.